Alex, good morning.
Morning.
So today I wanted to start off by talking about the simple things of life, particularly joy and wisdom.
Mm.
And my question to you is, you know, what is your take, or how do you derive joy and wisdom from the simple things in life?
So, we'll look at joy and wisdom as two separate things, right? Joy is the sensation, the experience, the appreciation of being alive, that warm feeling that we all have. And wisdom is kind of like this understanding of the nature of things, right? And the more wisdom you accumulate, I feel like the better you get at experiencing joy. Um, For me, I think you need to appreciate the little things in life because it's really all that you have. 90% of your life is not going to be these earth-shattering shifts. It's generally the little things, the mundane things. Even if you think about, the concept of a marriage or of a relationship. The movies will have you thinking that the relationship is made up of these highs, which it has, but a relationship is generally 90% you and your partner just doing everyday life together, going to buy groceries, having a coffee, doing the laundry, etc., etc. And the problem is if you can't find joy in those things, then it doesn't matter how great your life becomes, you won't experience joy on that side either. So like one of my favorite um, thought leaders is Naval Ravikant, and he says, if you're not happy having a cup of coffee on your house, at your house, you're not going to be happy having a coffee on a yacht. And the point that he's making is you need to figure out how to be happy right now because it doesn't matter how much you achieve, you won't fill that void. So it's a complicated, it's a challenging thing, I think, because I feel like we're not hardwired from a cultural perspective to be joyful. I think the culture pushes us to always look for more, which is the antithesis of joy, in my opinion. Joy is gratitude. So it's saying this is enough. Just having a cup of coffee when you wake up and seeing the sun is enough. Just having a friend who gives a shit about you is enough. So yeah, I mean, I feel like there's more to unpack there, but I'd love to hear your take as well on it, and then maybe we can
Yeah,
involved.
yeah. So I mean, I must say I agree with you 100%, right? I think, it's the little things that make life, you know. Even if you think to yourself, some of your greatest memories are probably the simple ones, right?
Yeah,
Like your first birthday that you can remember, your first date,
yeah,
first day at school,
first pet.
and all those things are felt and known by definition, right? So your first day at school will always be remembered as your first day at school,
Mm.
right? Irregardless of the school you go to, it's still a joyful, simple thing. And I mean, I'll really give you a great example. Like, if you take two people, someone who went to the best school in the country, their first day at school, and you take someone who's um disadvantaged and you ask them about their day at school, obviously it's not 100% correct what I'm saying, but based on, the questions that I've asked regarding this topic, even the people who went to school on their first day disadvantaged have some joyful memories about that day.
Of course, of course.
If it's a basic photo,
Yeah,
you know. And I think it's when you look at examples like that that you realize that all the extras are just a bonus in terms of how you feel, especially like when you're young, right? Think of it like this: when you're young or below a certain age, you don't know whether you are rich or poor,
mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
know?
normal to you.
Well, exactly. And you're able to adapt to the life that you're given.
Absolutely.
right? I mean, if you look at a kid on the street with their mom, they find a way to play
Yeah,
with their mom.
yeah,
If you look at a kid who's from a wealthy family and their massive palace, they find a way to play. You don't know that until you become conscious of it and as you get older. And I think when you look at life like a kid, then you see it for what it is. I think it's when we grow up that we start to seek happiness in the extra layers,
yes.
and lose touch with that soulful plainness that we have of just doing with what you have.
You know, that's that
So yeah,
biblical Adam and Eve, right? With the
yeah,
fruit of knowledge, fruit from the tree of knowledge. You were already in paradise and you didn't know it. Then you
yeah,
took a bite of the fruit and all of a sudden it wasn't enough. Now you needed more.
yeah.
You know, that's the,
And and
that's the
and that
story of growing up, I would say.
and that's a very good example, right? The forbidden fruit. And I mean, I wouldn't. I think the forbidden fruit is a very good way to kind of categorize it because it does come with consequences, and like
Absolutely.
once you have it, you can't look back.
Yes.
But I mean, I'll go back to kids again, right? You have two kids, one rich and one from a disadvantaged background. Both of them can play with the car. They can imagine themselves playing with the car. The one will use a stone or whatever's around them and imagine it's a car and drive it.
Yes.
And then the one has an actual car that they can push around and drive it.
Yeah.
But the level of joy is the same.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It is only when they both become conscious of the fact that there are cars out there that the one wishes for more, and
Yeah.
then the one who already has the car wishes for a better car.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's like not losing touch
With
of
that.
the basics
Yeah.
because that is literally where the foundation of joy comes from. And I think when you understand that it's the simple things, anything additional will make you happier, but it won't be the determiner of the happiness,
Mm. And I
You're not
think,
reliant on it.
yeah, I think this is a very important topic because if you think about how a lot of people live their life, it's a Monday to Friday sucks, Saturday and Sunday is great mentality, right? Which is very dangerous because the Monday to Friday is actually your real life. You know, Saturday and Sunday is not, it's more, it's the dessert, but it's not the
Mm,
main course. It's not the starter and it's
mm,
not the main course
mm,
of the meal of your life.
mm,
So you need to be really intentional about how you structure this 80% of your life. And you know, the simple things like you were saying, that is your life,
yeah.
not the fireworks. That's not your life, you know. So finding a way to engineer your day so that you can have some joy, whether it's like I said, you know, we talk about the little things when nobody's watching. For
Mm,
me, that's what's really key. It's like, what are you
100%.
doing when you're by yourself and nobody's watching, and how do you feel?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and whatever it has to be, if it's a chocolate, whatever, get yourself a chocolate. Like find something, you know,
For sure.
that
For sure.
little bit of listening to some music, you know, find something that lights you up because that's what
Wow.
makes it worth it. You know, when you
Yeah.
go and you see a friend, go and make time for that. Go and have some joy in your life, you know. Um, I feel like a lot of the times when people are in pain, they choose to numb themselves instead of pursuing joy because when you're in the darkness, you can't see light, you know, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So you choose numbness over feeling. But I think we spoke about this previous in the podcast. To feel the good, you have to be willing to feel the bad as well, right? You
Yeah.
can't be numb and feel joy because it's a
Yeah.
double-edged sword. Pain and joy
Yeah.
are cousins of each other. So
Yeah.
I would say you
Mhm.
should choose to feel and risk pain because the joy that you can get is worth it, you know?
Wow. And I think that's so well said, right? Because I mean, not to sway from obviously what we're talking about, but there's also joy in your task of life for getting more. or your goals or your objective, right?
Yes.
But in that element of life, there's the double-edged sword concept you spoke about. And what I mean by that is that when you are embarking on a very difficult task, there is pain involved,
Yes.
right? There is challenge, there is disappointment involved, but parallel to that, you have to find the joy in continuing to
Yes.
pursue that task. And I think
Absolutely.
it's in those instances where you need the mix of both. You can't numb the ability to enjoy the journey
Yes.
because you're going to get to a point where eventually you are dominated by the challenges in that journey. So I just love how you mix the two at the end there, because I think depending on what you're doing in life, you're eventually going to need to approach it with that double-edged mentality,
Yeah.
because yeah, as you grow older, you're going to just have to learn to find joy in all circumstances of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because your joy can't be dependent on the fact that life is good. No, no.
Absolutely. Yeah. And life's always good if you are paying close enough attention to it, right? Like
Yeah,
just being in the game of life is a gift where you're alive, so you've got a chance, you know?
yeah,
But
yeah,
to tackle the wisdom part of this question as well, I think cultivating an understanding of this pleasure, pain, joy, pain uh, relationship serves you a lot. One of the guys that I used to work with, he said something the one day that I loved when I was having a bit of a rough day at work. He said to me, Alex, it's a bad day, it's not a bad life. And this was coming from a guy who had lost a lot, who had been through a lot. So when he said it, it had a lot of weight to it, a lot of volume to it. I never forgot that, because it's like you can even dispel that to the concept of it's a bad moment, it's not a bad day. It's, you compress it and you just go back to that concept of wisdom, of understanding, what, this is just the other side of the scale. And
for sure.
I'd love to just bring this concept, not to go too deep into it, but I think with medicine today, a lot of the times we look for painkillers, we look for antidepressants, we look for these band-aid solutions that can numb us from pain, instead of listening to it and asking ourselves, why do we feel this pain? And how can we reconstruct our 80% of our life in the sense of the small things, so
Yeah,
we don't have that pain, or so that we can have more joy? Because it's not there for nothing. You know what I mean? Like, God didn't give us senses just to punish us. You've got
yeah,
pain senses for a reason. If you cut your hand, it's supposed to hurt, you know?
for
If
sure, for
if
sure,
you
for
if
sure,
you are living your life in a way that is against your nature, it's supposed to hurt.
for sure,
Don't ignore
for
that.
sure,
Listen
for
to it.
sure, for sure, for sure. And I just like to add on to that as well. If you're living your life in such a way that you want to achieve a lot, it's supposed to be tough.
Mm,
You know, I
absolutely.
think that's just the consequence of life, right? Anything worthwhile is tough to get. And any life worth living has to come with challenges, because I think, like you said, without knowing what tough is, how do you know what joy is? How do
Absolutely.
you know what happiness is?
It gives it meaning. It's like,
Yeah, for
the
sure.
best rest you've ever had is after a hard day of work.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're just resting all the time, it's got no meaning. It's the
100%.
same. That's why
100%.
we have loss, right? Like, love is heightened because of loss.
For sure.
As you
For
know,
sure.
temporary,
For sure. For sure.
you
For
know?
sure.
So,
So yeah, I think that's a perfect point for us to segue into the next topic that obviously you wanted to discuss. But
absolutely.
I'll kick us off obviously with the question there.
Yeah.
I just love for you to give me some context, obviously, on the topic of morality versus legality.
Mm.
Yeah. What exactly do you want to unpack out of that, and what inspired that question?
Well, the inspiration behind the question is built upon observations, right? So, I traveled to Germany earlier this year, and we went to the city of Nuremberg. And Nuremberg was the capital of Germany during the Nazi regime. And it made me think about the fact that laws are a man-made concept, and the individuals that craft the laws are flawed in themselves. So if you think about morality, morality is ethics. It's right and wrong. And that's bigger than man. That is nature. That is universal. But laws, you can have a law that is immoral. And that's what happened in Nazi Germany. You had people creating laws that was evil. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I was thinking about the individual responsibility that we have to not outsource our sense of morality to lawmakers. Because they say it's like if you stand in heaven and Saint Peter is judging you at the gates and he asks you, why did you round up the Jews? And you say to him, well, it was the law. He's going to say to you, sorry, that's not good enough. And he's going to send you downstairs. You know what I mean? So I guess the question that I would ask here is, how can we stay in a state of readiness or in a state of alertness to make sure that the rules around us are not doing our thinking for us? Because that's the danger, right?
For sure, for sure, for sure.
What do you think about
So yeah, so I mean, quite a very good question, very deep, right? Because I mean, I think even in the world we live in today, there's so many legalities that are happening that,
that?
conflict with, for example, my
Moral.
morality, right? And it's also very difficult to sometimes navigate that because, I mean, we live in a system, right? We live in a world that's bigger than ourselves. And obviously, depending on where you live in the world, I think that will determine your ability to um, kind of like firstly make an influence to that, or and secondly have a voice, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me personally, I think the best and the biggest thing you can do is to within your private spaces, um, share how you feel about certain situations,
Yes.
just in case that there might be someone, in your close circle who is on the wrong side of it, right? Because sometimes when people are doing legal things which are morally wrong, they have been um, convinced to do so, or they've
Yeah.
just fallen for the propaganda, you
Ideological
know,
capture.
100%. So for me, the biggest thing you can do is to help the person next to you. If you cannot do it like at a at
Yeah.
a at a scale level.
Yeah.
And then obviously second one, this is the most spiritual, just pray about it in your heart. But I just think it depends on what level that you're on
Yeah.
that allows for you to take course because yeah, like I said, you're just a human being and there's some things that are just way beyond your actual
Mm.
there's almost nothing you can do about it because it is what it is. But starting with the person next to you is the best thing you can do. And I mean, I'll use a very good example right here in our country, right? Like I mean, during the days of apartheid, there were people that didn't agree with it, but
Mm.
within their personal lives would have workers, friends,
Yeah.
etc. I mean, the ANC itself was funded to a certain
Yeah.
extent by white people, right, that didn't agree with the law. So I think it starts off with like the people next to you.
Yeah.
That's where you can make the greatest influence. And as that grows, then can you also, take it forward.
Beautiful.
But yeah, that's just my take. What's your take on the legality versus morality?
Such a great answer, T. So well crafted, well articulated. I love that. Um, for me, I would say you need to speak the truth. you need to be honest with yourself and with the people around you about whether
Yeah.
this thing makes sense and aligns with your moral compass.
Yeah.
You know, something that I've seen, especially I've seen it in our country, is people censoring themselves out of fear of labels, especially the worst labels like sexism or racism. And the reason why I don't agree with self-censorship is because I think if you are racist or sexist, you must be corrected. I think you must be corrected. And you only
Yeah.
be corrected if you say what you really think. And so that's
Yeah.
the beauty. You know, you were talking about this concept of being a flawed human with limited vision, I guess, a
Yeah.
limited
Yeah.
understanding of how everything works.
Yeah.
The way that your understanding is going to get corrected is if the collective, being the people around you, correct you and
Yeah.
educate you and point out the flaws in your thinking. And that's
Yeah.
why this self-censorship out of fear of labels is so dangerous because your thinking never expands.
Yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes
Yeah.
you're right. And then it's important for you to speak out and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. You guys are saying this, but this is not really what's happening. And
Mm.
and you
Mm.
know, it's interesting, you know, we talk about history and the truth is history is being written as we speak. You know, we always think about history as the past, and no one ever wants to be part of a historic event because generally those aren't very fun. Otherwise, they wouldn't be historic. But we have a responsibility as the people of today to write the right history, you know, and make sure
Yes.
that the world goes in the direction that it should. So that responsibility, it's like everyone admires the people of the past who stood up for what was right and what they believed in,
Yes.
but they don't
100%.
realize that that's them now today. That's you. You must be that person.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
like
For
you
sure.
say, it doesn't have to be a big thing like going to a rally or, you know, making this big statement. It can be through your presence and influence through the people around you. And
Mm.
you have that in your mind of saying, you know, I have a responsibility. I should say what I think, even if
Mm.
the people around me don't like it. I must say it so
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
can have peace in my heart afterwards,
For
knowing
sure.
I
For
said
sure.
what was true, you know.
And I like what you said that, right? You must say what is in your mind because, yes, granted, in the opportunity that you're right, you would have benefited those around you. But in the instance where you're wrong, the
Yes,
opportunity to be corrected is also just as enlightening, right?
absolutely.
Because that saves you now from going to a second or a third circle and saying the incorrect thing.
Yes.
And then ultimately allow yourself to be in danger on the wrong side of
Yeah.
favoritism or maybe favoritism, but on the wrong side of
The issue.
people
Yeah, absolutely.
and of the issue, right? And in actual sense, I think a lot of people end up in the wrong side of on the wrong side of the situation or the public opinion because of not expressing yourself firstly to the people around you and
100%.
to enough people around you that have an accurate understanding of what is happening.
Yes.
Right. So like a lot of the time, I think like especially like when people come out like sexist, racist, whatever it is, and get labeled by the public. Yes, some of them are that,
Yeah. And some of them,
but
yeah.
there's some of them who just didn't do enough research about what they were speaking about.
Yeah. Yes.
And because of that ideological capture that you spoke about,
Yeah.
or just not having proper context because maybe your circle is not diverse enough,
Sure.
you went out and you've made yourself a fool in front of the world, and you've then been labeled by society because of your
Yeah.
inaccurate judgment.
Or even, you know, on the other side of the equation where society has been captured by ideology. I mean,
Yeah,
look what happened in Nazi Germany. In Nazi
yeah,
Germany, it was society that was wrong
yeah,
and
for
the
sure,
individual that was right.
for
And
sure,
and
for
so,
sure.
you know, the issue with to social media today is that ideological capture happens on a broader scale because of
Yeah,
technology
for
and
sure.
because of conditioning. So daily conditioning from a social media platform.
For
So
sure.
this concept of questioning legality and morality is even more important today than it ever was before,
Mm,
because
mm,
messaging
mm.
is coming in such a big wave every day,
For sure. For
consistently.
sure. For sure. For sure.
But
For
like
sure.
if you're scrolling, especially, you think about scrolling, right? It's very passive. It's passive consumption. And passive consumption is affecting your subconscious, where these ideas can get planted. Um, that's why it's so important today. When you hear a message, you have to say to yourself, hold on, does this make sense? Before you accept it. Because you are being
Yeah.
spoon-fed ideas.
Yeah.
No kind of like concept of quality control. Is this even good? I mean, you don't know the
For sure.
algorithm that is using you. You know what I mean?
100%. 100%. 100%. And I like that, right? I like how you mentioned the fact that, like, you know, society can get captured,
Hmm.
right? And that's why you always have to ask yourself, but on the contrary of that, how does a movement start?
Yes.
A movement doesn't start by someone going and standing on a mountain and saying,
Blah blah blah.
everyone is wrong and I'm right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It starts off by the person next to you, right? It's like I said, there's this quote by Buddha says it takes one candle to light 1,000 candles,
Mm.
right? So sometimes, especially in the world that we live in, right? I'm not saying that don't always voice yourself, but there's a way to do it
Excuse
that
me.
is extremely powerful,
Yes.
and that is aligned with how nature works,
Yeah.
and that's the simple one, help the person next to you
Yeah.
and let nature take its course, and the more passionately and the more genuine and intentional you are about it, yes, nature will put you in challenging situations for you to stand for what you live for,
Yes.
what you're speaking about. But I
Abs-
think that is the most powerful way to spread a message.
Yeah. And
They call it like mobilizing, if I
yeah.
must say.
Yeah.
You
And
mobilize.
I think just honesty is the big thing that I'm hammering on
Yeah,
you, because I
yeah,
believe that everybody in their heart generally knows what's right and what's wrong. Um, I don't think that in Nazi Germany, every German that did terrible things believed that it was right. I think they were probably lying to themselves. And you know, when a person does something that they know is wrong, but they're scared of the consequences of not doing that thing, so they lie to
yeah,
themselves instead of
yeah,
admitting that they're afraid. Um,
yeah,
I think honesty is everything. So, like, your moral compass will guide you. We talk about intuition all the time on this podcast. Morality and intuition is synonymous. Your morality is just your intuitive sense of what's right and what's wrong,
sure.
and that's rooted in honesty. So, I guess the big thing that I would say to people on this concept of what is the difference between legality and morality? It's the honesty. There are laws that are dishonest, where it's not right, but there's a agenda behind it, you know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and like you said, just speaking to the people next to you, that's rooted in honesty, you know.
yeah,
So
for
being
sure,
honest with
for sure.
yourself and the person next to you about what you really think is the key, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, also, like, I like what you mentioned there to close off this topic, right? Ask yourself, does this make sense? And I think oftentimes in life, and I do believe that your morality can be numbed, right? If you're born into something that was already a construct
Yes.
and you're not exposed to anything else. And that's why, like, diversity is so important.
Mm,
Putting yourself in other people's shoes is important. Understanding other people's cultures and background is so important because
mm.
that allows for you to understand that your way of living isn't the only way. Your beliefs
Absolutely.
aren't the only beliefs, right?
Absolutely.
And through that context, you then have this 360 universal understanding of everything. And when you have that, I believe your morality grows,
Yeah,
your intuition to tell what is right from wrong becomes better,
absolutely.
because now you have a view of all lenses and not just yours.
100%.
So yeah, I think that's a very interesting topic, and I think we should definitely expand on that, going forward. But in a nutshell, I mean, if you look around what's happening in the world, there's many, many different things happening.
Mm,
and the legal side of things is allowing it, even though we all know it's morally incorrect.
absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, as a human being, how do you stand against that, right? If it's the law. And as we've mentioned, you start off by speaking to those around you, and if you are 100% correct, educating others on the fact that you believe that this needs to change, and hopefully,
Yeah.
the message gets to enough people, and then take it from there. But
Really.
yeah, lovely topic. I'm not sure if you have anything you want to say before we close off there.
I just want to go and reiterate the message of we have a responsibility to write history today. And I know that everybody feels insignificant, like most people feel quite insignificant in their influence on the world. But I just want to say that what you do matters. So keep that in mind. Even if it's the smallest thing of how you treat the people around you, that matters.
For sure,
How you do your work, it matters. So take that, take that message. You have a responsibility. That's what I would say.
for sure. So yeah, that's it. Thank you, Alex. Great way to start the morning, and yeah, hope you have an amazing day. Thanks for listening, guys.
Till next time, guys. Have a good one.